you know?
Talk to me about your transition from um, Orthodox member into becoming an Orthodox priest. What was that like for
Oh
you?
yeah. Okay, so I was on track for ordination in the Methodist Church. And so when I converted, I had to have some uncomfortable conversations, uh, which went fine. I was not treated, I did not have bad experiences leaving the Methodist Church,
Yeah.
right? And I did not have a real, like some people do from the traditions they come. I did not have a real bad attitude towards my past.
Yeah.
I had a
Yeah.
pretty healthy, positive past, and I didn't become Orthodox because I had so many problems with and complaints and or any sort of trauma or something from my past. I became, because I, in some ways, I just saw it as, oh, this is just the next step of me further pursuing my relationship with Christ and working out what it means to be a Christian, and what the church means, and tradition, just working that out. So I converted and then graduated shortly after. I also got married in college too. I got married very young. I got married when I
Oh,
was 20, right?
wow.
Yes. So yeah, so like I'm 42 and my oldest son is 18, right? Um, and so I got married, yeah, in college, and that's why I said a lot of stuff happened in college, right? It was like
Yeah. Yeah.
attended a church, and then got married, and then became Orthodox, and then graduated, and then I basically just hung around because I made the decision that if Orthodoxy was really true, right? If I thought it was really true, then that should be then my vocation should be a worthy sacrifice for the truth. So I decided then maybe I'd be an Orthodox priest, maybe I wouldn't, but I decided that I was not going to convert with that sort of like string attached, right? It had to be like free. And then I would just work out as I went along if that was a thing. So I spent maybe uh, 5 years, sort of in the parish, and kind of worked, just started taking on more and more leadership, more and more
Yep.
responsibility, and
Yep.
taught church, taught Sunday school, and served on the parish council, and, was eventually tonsured a reader, and, all these things. Um, so that was my experience after college, was that. And I worked at Goodwill Industries. I did like basic like social work type stuff. And I ran I ran a program for a while working with felons, guys who are on parole. So I did a vocational rehab program, did this work job placement with
Hmm.
guys, had a couple guys threatened to, I have so many great stories from this time with those guys. But
Those
but
kind of jobs give you great stories.
yeah, no, it was good preparation. Like, for example, one of the rules that I have for my catechumens comes from uh, basically parole policies that I learned about during that time,
Hmm.
which is they don't let, like in parole, you're not allowed to have develop new romantic relationships of any kind, right? Because it almost like 100%, almost 100% means the person will go back to prison.
Yeah.
Like they'll violate their parole in some
Yep.
way, in the
Yep.
rules.
Yep.
And the reasons for that are the same reasons I tell people, just put any big new romantic relationships, just put on the back burner, just put it on hold. And then when you're done, you can pick that back up. Just don't do too many huge life changes. I mean, part of it's just that. Just don't be stupid. Don't do too much at once.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like focus.
Yeah.
Um, this is a big deal. Are you going to do this for the rest of your life, or is this a fad? I'm not going to let it be a fad. So if you want to do it, let's do it right.
Yeah.
So it came from that, and I did that for it. And then eventually, went through a discernment process, trying to figure out, is this what I really want to do? And talked to my parish priest about that. And, and I will say this, I think one of the best look, okay, a couple of things. When people talk about a calling, I think it's almost always understood a sense of like a personal inward calling. And I think that's definitely a part of it. But the other dimension to a calling is that the community calls you,
Hmm.
right? That they
Hmm.
call you out. And I
Hmm.
think this gets ignored and forgotten a lot, right? That it's like,
Hmm.
well, how does God speak to you? Well, God does speak to you through other people for the most
Hmm.
part.
Hmm.
So, if the church is calling you, then that's God calling you.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I found myself, slowly as a layman, taking on more and more responsibilities and ministries and duties that were more and more like being a clergyman.
Hmm.
Right? And so, like,
Hmm.
that I think is a natural way. It's like you're looking at a parish or community who should be going onwards to serve. It's like, well, what are people already doing? Right?
Yep.
Like, are
Yep.
you really going to be something different than what you're not doing now when you have the opportunity to do it? And it's like, probably not. So I discerned that. And part of that was meeting with Father Roman Braga, who is a Romanian priest monk who was the served a women's monastery that was maybe like 10 minutes from my house where I grew up in Michigan. Um, he was a really holy man. He's one of these people talk about in the church of like, oh, maybe he'll be made a saint one day. So he's one of these people that's like potential saint type material. He was really influential in my mentor we talked about from college, who became my godfather, right? When I was brought
Hmm.
into the church, he was really instrumental in him becoming Orthodox. And Father Roman was known for having sort of the gift of clairvoyance, like knowing things about your life and stuff that
Hmm.
you couldn't.
Yep.
How would you know this?
Yep.
Godfather had a pretty profound experience of that in his
Hmm.
conversion process. And so I was regularly at the monastery, which when we were really young, we had young kids. My oldest son, who's 18 now, when he was real little, he was maybe like 6. He always called it the monastery, which all the nuns thought was hilarious, right? They liked it. And so, yeah. Father Roman was great. I don't think I've told very many people this story, but I went and met with him to have a discussion, like a real formal kind of discussion about discerning to go to seminary and be a priest. And we talked, and the most profound thing he said and left me with was he goes, look, Matthew, God is not going to come down in a giant cloud of light and speak to you in some message. He goes, God has already given you everything you need. He's giving you the people around you, He's giving you your good judgment and reason. And so you need to do that. And you should not wait around for
Mm,
some sign,
mm,
because doing that is being wasteful of what you've already been given,
mhm,
what's already been revealed to you, and a bit egotistical,
mhm, mhm.
and it was just real practical, solid advice
Yeah.
from someone who was in many ways a real mystic. He suffered really profoundly in the Romanian gulags, right?
Mm,
I mean, there some of the most, I mean, forms of torture and psychological experimentation that you couldn't even talk about you couldn't even say it out
yeah.
loud, like
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Um,
Yeah.
and so you have someone like that just giving you such down to earth, practical
Yeah.
advice too.
Yeah.
It was good. It was a good reminder. It's like, yeah, yeah, that's right. And sometimes you already know what you're supposed to do. You're just sort of looking for someone else to give you a thumbs up, right? You're just
Mhm.
sort of like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm looking for someone to tell me no. Someone tell me
Mhm.
not do this. And so
Yep.
that's, I think, what I was doing in that situation was like, I need to do due diligence and make sure I'm not being a fool, in
Yep.
the process.
So where were you a priest first?
New Jersey.
Okay.
So when I went to seminary, I was from the Midwest. So typically you return to the diocese you were sent from for the most
Mm.
part.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there is some transference that goes around, but it's kind of difficult because it's so relationship based with bishops. Like, I've been like the secretary of our diocese for a number of years. And so I've been helping the bishop out with stuff. We always get like letters of petition for people to come into the diocese, priests out there looking for places.
Hmm.
Get a lot of priests from like uh the old world sometimes who are looking to come to America and stuff like that. And he's like, Bishop's always like, I don't know this person. They're like, put them in a file. Like, it's like because he would never put someone somewhere that he doesn't know. Right. Like the level of personal relationship is just it really matters. Right.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and so unless there's some credible need and the person comes with a lot of like other recommendations and other stuff that, yeah. So it happens, like, especially if it's like, oh, I need to move to be with my aging parents, help take care of them or whatever. Like there's like a lot of times family needs
Hmm.
will really drive people sort of going across the country to different dioceses, but it's not typical. So when I was in seminary, we had a glut of seminarians from our diocese of the Midwest. So it was like there were no openings. There weren't any openings kind of coming for around the bend. And there were like, I was in seminary with like 8 or 10 other guys from the Midwest. And there were like 4 or 5 guys from previous years who had graduated who were kind of waiting around to get ordained in an assignment. So I decided, you know what, I should be smart here, and I hitched my wagon to another bishop, who was he taught at the seminary. He was from New York, and I've always had sort of a draw towards more urban ministry,
Hmm.
an
Hmm.
urban setting. So then I just hitched my wagon to him, and so my first parish for 8 years was in New Jersey, sort of like in from New Jersey. Well, yeah, you would know it's from Bergen County.
Yep.
So it was in a the church was in a town called Saddlebrook,
Yep.
and I lived and still live in a house we have in Glen Rock, which
Yep.
is a couple towns north of there.
So now you are pastoring in Manhattan.
Yeah, that's right. So when I decided that I was going to start my PhD program, which like I always like I did very well in seminary, right? And I'll often had people say, "Oh, you should do more studies and more of this," and so and I did, and partly I had questions and theological stuff I wanted to work through. And so at some point you're sort of like, man, if people keep telling you to do something, maybe you should sort of like take it seriously. And I'm a bit of an ambitious person, so I like oh, I'll do more, you know. So like I'm kind of like that. Um, so I did, and when I made that move and got accepted there, I decided that was a good time to change parishes. I was also concerned because the parish we were at had like basically no children, and I was getting worried, not so much about my eldest son, but my eldest son is pretty severely, disabled. He's got some pretty big
Mm.
disabilities. um, but he loves church, and he's always serving in the altar, and so like church is like wonderful for him. It doesn't matter if there were any kids there at church or not. But my daughter growing up, sort of coming into like middle school and soon to high school, I was more concerned about, of like, man, I don't want to give her like I had such a good experience as a teen, and I thought, man, that is a. I was just feeling sort of like I'm gonna feel guilty. I'm gonna feel like I really failed if
Mm.
I had such a great experience like that as a kid, and I was not able to give that to my own daughter.
Mm.
I don't know that kind of stuff as a parent kind of hurts. You're sort
Yeah.
of just like you don't want to do that. So I also thought, switching parishes might be good. Anyways, I've been there for 8 years, and I had sort of felt like maybe I'd done everything I could do for that parish. Maybe someone else could do
Yep.
other things.
Yep.
This parish had some more children. It had some more potential to grow. So I was like, okay, I'll make that switch, which I did. Now this parish, and we're in the upper west side of Manhattan, so we're like a couple blocks south of Columbia University, and just like 2 blocks away from the from Central Park. Now I got here on the heels of basically a scandal. So they had like in 2018-19, there was this big scandal, sexual misconduct scandal in the parish with the previous rector, the previous priest. And then COVID hit right after that. So it was like 1-2 punch, to the parish. When I got assigned here, the bishop, well, first of all, the bishop was able to find a wealthy family to basically fund my entire salary, right, for a number of years out. Um, and when I got to this parish, there were like 10 people and like no money in the bank account. Now, like on like the past couple of Sundays, we've had like 70 people or something like that. And so this was maybe like 3 years. I've been here for 3 years.
Hmm. Hmm.
And huge chunk of these people are all new. They're all very young. Um, and which is great, but there's still enough older people in the parish that it's a good
Yeah.
dynamic.
You want that.
So I've been here. I didn't sort of expect. I kind of took this church and thought, oh, well, this won't be a lot of work because I'm doing my PhD. Is that the way like to trick God into like making you successful, right? Is be like, I'll do this thing and it won't work, so I can do other things or something. And then it starts to like explode, and I'm like, oh, okay, more problems. All right. I mean, they're good problems. That's one of my words of wisdom is like, you don't want no problems. You want to aim for having the best problems in your
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
So.
What's it like moving churches? Because in the Christian Reformed Church, I've gotten 2 letters in 2 weeks from other churches that, they're having a search process and they'd like to know if I'd be willing to, let my name stand in their search process, yada yada yada. But you've got a bishop system. So what is that
Yeah.
like in the Orthodox
Yeah.
Church?
So the different jurisdictions, it differs a little bit, right? So like the OCA is not as militaristic in the way it operates like this, but like say the Antiochians, which are like the Arab Christians, and then like the Greeks, it's a lot more like, oh, the bishop says, hey, um, you're going to go here, you know,
Oh,
right? So there, it's a lot more of like a real, a
yeah.
more of an appointment system. In the OCA, well, see, like the Greeks can do that more because the Greeks have more money. So part of it is like if you pay somebody enough, you can sort of tell them to do more things. Here, it's sort of like a lot of OCA priests don't get paid well. Like in Alaska, our Alaska diocese, which is like almost entirely just a Native peoples diocese, um, which has like a treaty. Just people are like, our diocese has like a Native peoples treaty with the federal government,
Hmm.
sort of treated like in a semi-tribal status, right? It was given the federal government gave all this land to the diocese, mostly because it was like stolen from the Native people, so it was like a way to sort of like give some of it back. Anyways, but most of those priests there, like they're south, they live under the federal poverty line. Almost all the priests in that diocese. Um, so when, I mean, that's way more extreme than the lower 48, but nevertheless, it's hard to just give people marching orders when they don't have very much money. You're not paying them a whole lot. So
Yeah.
the way it kind of works, like I'll tell you how it kind of works in our diocese is the bishop will be like, look, he'll email priests, I have these openings, these things are coming up down the down. If anyone wants to transfer or move, he won't even he won't even say like what the opening is. He'll just say anybody who's interested in moving, like reach out to me, right? And then there's those conversations that happen. So it's sort of like a conversation. There's sort of like a symbiotic relationship of sort of like, oh, what do you want? What do you need? You move, sometimes like we had like one priest that was like down in southern part of New Jersey, moved up to like more parts of like northern New York State to be closer to like his wife's parents to help them. So like those kind of moves happen. But priests do tend to stay in a parish for a very long time,
Hmm.
sometimes like 30, 40 years. They'll be there for a long time. There's pluses and minuses to sort of long tenures and short tenures. You just have to sort of pick your poison
Yeah.
with a lot of that. And so for me, I just told him, I was like, hey, I'd be interested. And I knew that there was an opening here at Mary Magdalene. I said, hey, I'd open into moving to a different parish like Mary Magdalene that would work for the PhD stuff. And I was in conversation with my bishop about the PhD process, right? Which one of the reasons wanted to do that too is that in seminary, the most ideal professor is the one who is like a priest and has pastoral experience and is an academic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's not a lot of that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and so you get sort of these either or worlds, and um, sometimes they can be not as beneficial or helpful as sort of the student needs, right, in seminary.
Yeah.
But hey, maybe I can help, serve in that way,